Black lives matter worldwide till the end of time. We rising up, can't nobody stop us. The love we got colossal. We rising up, white supremacy, your throne's about to topple. We rising up.
We wrote our report on the sexual abuse to prison pipeline together with Rights for Girls and the Ms. Foundation to elevate such a critical issue for girls, and particularly girls of color, which is their criminalization for being victimized. So the most grim example of that pipeline is when girls are sex trafficked, and yet they're the ones who are arrested on charges like prostitution. They're the ones put into the juvenile justice system, even though they're the survivors that need to be supported, and it's the others who need to be held accountable. Schools can play a critical role in disrupting the sexual abuse to prison pipeline by recognizing signs of trauma when they see them in girls of color and addressing them in schools as places of healing so that girls can stay in school, and their connectedness to school is a protective factor in stopping them from entering the juvenile justice system.
If we stopped pushing girls out of schools, out of opportunities to have an education, I think we would interrupt the pipeline to prison, because education is a equalizer and a tool that allows people to rise up, allows people to grow and be, a part of our community. You push a girl out of school and you push her into the streets, you push her into violence, you push her into trauma, you push her into all types of experiences that are not positive experiences. And many times that will, out of desperation, out of need, they'll end up in the criminal justice system, even if it's just the need to be desired, to be wanted, to be loved, and going into relationships and situations that might not be the best for them.
Mr. Cook, you want to approach and we can find out why you're by yourself today?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Our data is showing us that the majority of the children that are ending up in the juvenile justice system began as abuse, neglect, dependency cases. Okay, how old is she?
She's 13, she'll be 14 this year.
We know there's a higher number of assaults against black girls. They're more likely to be trafficked. They're more likely to be molested. They're more likely to fall into so many different categories that affect their ability to learn.
The fact that black girls are 6 times more likely to be suspended than white girls is not known. The town halls that we had across the country and are continuing to have been enormously illuminating. I went into the town halls thinking that this would basically be useful for communities to hear people who were not fully aware that our girls are at risk. And some of the things that that I heard just blew me away. So the town hall that we did in Los Angeles, for example, revealed the extent to which black girls here in Los Angeles are tremendously disproportionately vulnerable to trafficking. Just had no idea about how vulnerable black girls are, and then no idea about the relationship between being pushed out of school and being vulnerable to being trafficked actually was. So the tendency is to think about these as completely separate risks, completely separate issues. There's suspension, and then there's trafficking. But the reality, and we had some girls testify, that their first encounter with being groomed for trafficking occurred when they were suspended from school. And that became a pattern. We also learned that many times the conditions that prompted the suspension were actually the product of trauma that was undiagnosed. There were no skills and no resources to identify the trauma. And even when the trauma was known, the only tool that they had was suspension. So there was this cyclical dimension of the relationship between punitive approaches to girls in trouble and the trouble that comes when those punitive approaches force them further outside existing institutions.